Hello everyone, welcome once again to the Applications Manager free training series. So the first part is simply monitoring the website for performance problems, which basically means monitoring a particular web page or a URL or your website uh, to check the availability and to check the health of your website. The second part, which is by far the most significant or important part of this session, is what is called synthetic transaction monitoring, and we'll see how we use an agent a and a recorder to simulate user behavior and then monitor these simulated transactions with the product. So this helps us understand how a user's experience with your website is going to be from different parts of the world. And then we will take a look at this feature known as Web Page Analyzer, which will basically help you break down your individual web page components and analyze them. For example, one of the key insights that this particular feature offers is the page speed insight. It tells you the page speed and it tells you how you can optimize the page speed further by taking corrective measures. So that's something that comes in really handy when it comes to improvising your web page performance. And finally, a little bit of a security feature, which perhaps falls under the category of brand reputation management. And that's what we call it within Applications Manager. And what this particular feature does is it tracks your websites for insecure links or phishing links or malware links and alerts you when any such unauthorized access um, or unusual attacks are detected on your website. So this is basically a summary of what we will be seeing. So let's just break down and look at each of them one by one. The first of which is website monitoring for performance problems, and this is perhaps the most simplistic of all the uh, monitors or features that we will talk about today in the user experience monitoring agenda, that is. And of course, if you see on the left, you can see the parameters that you can see when it comes to your URL monitor or your website monitor, some of which include the DNS time, the connection time. It actually gives you a split up of the response time, and each of these parameters are configurable. That is, you can associate thresholds and alerts to each of these parameters and get alerted. So let me take you to the product for a quick moment and just show you here. This is the publicly available URL, demo.appmanager.com. You can use it anytime to see the features that the product has and explore your way through the various functionalities and see how it might help you in your IT monitoring goals. And here is a local setup that I have installed within my server right here. So I'll be moving between both of them to show you certain details. So first, let me move here. Right here is the monitors tab. And what I'm doing within the monitors tab is browsing to this category, web server and services. And right here is the HTTP URL monitors. So I'll just take one example of a monitor that has already been added and just show you the details that we were seeing within the presentation now. So this is a quick view of basically this particular URL. As you can see, this is the URL that we are monitoring here with a poll interval of 5 minutes. And the availability is 100, and it gives us a little bit detail about the response time, the attributes, that is average and current response time. Right here are the details that we saw within the presentation. That is the DNS, the connection, first byte and last byte times. So that is the URL monitor, very simple. And what you have to do to add this monitor is, I'm just going to this build now because the demo will not allow you to add any devices. Of course, that's because it's a demo version. So I'm right here, I'm clicking on this title here which says new monitor, and I click on add new monitor. And when I do that, I'm brought back to this screen where again I navigate to the section that says web server services, and I click on this very link right here, HTTP URL. And when I do that, this is the screen where I can add. So I'm just going to give some name. This name can be anything, and you have to here specify the URL that you want to monitor. So here is my URL, and you should be pretty much good to go with just these details. But however, if you have any authentication for your website, that is the website to be monitored, this one, you can specify those credentials right here. And you can also choose to perform content check, that is for the contents of this URL, that is this option right here. And it will basically trigger an alert for the presence or the absence of any content within that web page based on the configuration that you make here. So that's how you add a URL monitor. And we have seen the details that the URL monitor can present as well. So let's get back to the presentation and move to this part, the second part. And this part is where we will spend a little bit of our time, that is a significant amount of this session will be spent here, because we will see how real transactions can be performed and captured with the help of this recorder. So first, I'm going to take you through a series of slides within this presentation, and then we will do whatever we saw in these slides in real time with the product. So the first thing is, what does synthetic transaction essentially do, or what is it designed to do? What advantage can it present? So the very first advantage is that it gives you complete visibility into the performance parameters of your website. And this is to say it goes beyond health and availability monitoring that we saw in the URL monitor, which is completely agentless. So in this case, we require an agent which communicates with which basically communicates with the website, and it collects all the parameters, which might include network requests, load time details, DNS details, network latency, and it basically gives us screenshots of different web pages or different transactions, as we will see in the following slides. And another biggest advantage that it offers is it offers the flexibility to monitor this user experience from different parts of the globe. So this could be pictured as a branch office that is located in different cities across the globe, and you're trying to measure the user experience from those locations. Or it might be customers that are located in different parts of the globe. So this image here is perhaps a representation of how the entire setup looks like. So here you see that the web transaction recorder, which will capture these transactions, it basically resides in the server similar to Applications Manager, or in this case, you can simply install the Google Chrome extension that says Applications Manager Web Transaction Recorder. I'll show that to you as well when we perform it in live. And then these agents, these end user monitoring agents, these have to be installed in the locations from where performance has to be measured. And what these agents then do is collect and send these performance parameters from each of those locations to the central Applications Manager console. So from one place with the Applications Manager UI, you will be able to tell what the performance end user experience basically is from these different locations. And should you find any performance problems, which the product, which synthetic transaction monitoring feature itself will be able to identify and inform you, you can then take troubleshooting actions to optimize or improve the user experience further. And the supported browsers, as you can see here, are Firefox, Chrome, and Edge. Let me just take you to this slide where you can see that apart from the supported browsers, that is Firefox, Edge, and Chrome. The product also allows you to import your own Selenium test cases, which can be run to capture the transactions and monitor them. A quick look at what the recorder tool will look like once we try to start it, and once we try and once we log in and begin to collect the transaction. So once we have crossed that screen that is given our details, this is the screen that we will be presented with, which will offer three options basically. The first is record a new transaction, which is what we will see today. The second is open a recorded transaction, and this is basically if you already have transactions recorded and added, what you can do there is probably go and edit any transactional flow that you might want to, and those kind of changes basically. And the final import a Selenium script is what we just spoke about, that if you have a script, you can just import that file and the product will map those transactions in the console for you. So to summarize basically what the synthetic transaction monitoring, of course, you see that the name here says real browser monitoring because that is the name that we've given to it within the applications manager product. And to summarize what this feature or this monitor is designed to do is it mimics user interactions, and this part especially is what is known as a synthetic transaction monitoring, the act of simulating user behavior across your web application or uh, website, and then recording and playing these simulated transactions again to collect performance parameters. So that is synthetic transaction monitoring, and it basically is real time because there's an agent that is communicating with it all the time, and so the data is real time, and it is perhaps as close to the real-time accurate values as they possibly could. And finally, what it basically helps us do is it eliminates the finger pointing games within teams, which is often noticed among server teams and network teams and developer teams as to where the source of the problem is. However, when you have the kind of insights that we will be seeing for synthetic transaction monitoring, you will understand how easy it becomes to pinpoint not just the source of the problem, but exactly what the problem is, and possibly how you can address the problem. So that is about the real browser monitor. A few more screenshots of what it looks like, what the collected data will look like. So in this example, you see there are 5 transactions that have been performed, and of the 5 transactions in this graph, we see that the load time of each of these transactions is given here, and here is a listed format where we see that this particular step perhaps took the longest load time. So based on this, we can probably measure them or compare them against the values that you know are ideal for the kind of business that you are. So this is one example, and this is another example of the detail that is captured. And I think I probably mentioned this, that the there will be screenshots taken of each of these transactions, of each of the web pages that we go through when we perform these transactions. And once these screenshots are taken, we see that there's a split up of the kind of resources that comprise this page, and what is the percentage wise contribution of each of these resources. So for example, things like this can perhaps tell us that that because the image files are too much in this page, that is why the load time is probably high. But how do we confirm that it is the image file that is contributing to high load times? We know that image files are higher in number, but then we cannot really ascertain from this particular insight here that they are contributing to the delayed load times or response time. However, right here in this graph, which is the waterfall graph, all of this becomes even clearer. So where on the left we have the exact name of the resource that is loading, and here you know the type of resource it is. So if you see an image file here with an increased load time, you can probably then ascertain that the image file, or this particular image file with this delayed response time is creating a problem. And basically that has given you not just the problem, but the reason for the problem and a possible suggestion as to uh, optimize or replace or do something about the image files that are contributing to this delayed times. So to quickly summarize what the synthetic transaction monitoring feature can do before we move to the product. So what it helps us do is it helps us play back scripts and captures all the transactions, and these transactions could be anything from the click of a button or a swipe, or me simply hovering over a tab and a tool tip popping out, things like that. So all of these actions will be captured. It will help organizations to basically meet SLAs that require you to ensure optimal performance of your web applications from different locations. It basically also allows you to understand the customer journey. It tells you which pages are actually putting off users. It tells you the performance of different pages. For example, there might be critical pages such as a page with a lead collection form or a payment gateway page, and these are some things that you might want to monitor and always keep track of from the user's perspective. It will also help us, in fact, detect problems with any new features that you are launching. For example, imagine you launched a live chat widget within your website, and ever since that happened, maybe the response time has been slow. So with the waterfall graph, you will be able to pinpoint if any new feature or new enhancement made to the website is contributing to problems, thereby helping you to test new features before you actually launch them to your website. And finally, it will help you pinpoint issues and segregate them, not just isolate region specific issues, but also isolate issues pertaining to different elements on your website, like images or HTML or CSS or scripts and so on and so forth. So I guess what we have seen so far is probably uh, might have probably given us some understanding of what this feature is supposed to do. So let's get to the product and let's see just how to access and how to make use of this feature. So one of the very first things that you will have to do is click on this EUM tab, which is end user monitoring, and then browse down to this part, that is the help card, and download the agent. So this is the very first step that you have to do. When you click this, it will take you to a web page where you can download the agent based on the version of applications manager that you are using and the type of server that you are using. So I have already installed the EUM agent in my server, and that's pretty much it. So what you need is to download the EUM agent. You have your and ensure that the EUM agent is running. You can make sure it's running by going to the Windows Task Manager and looking for the EUM agent under services, and just ensure that it is in running state. And here install this extension, that is the web transaction recorder extension, and that is pretty much it. So once you have the recorder installed, once you have the agent installed, you should be good to collect uh, details, that is perform transactions and collect details. So what I am going to do now in this example is I have my agent already in the running state. So I'm just going to start my transaction recorder. And my transaction recorder, this is the screen that we saw in the presentation. So what I'm going to do now is enter my details, my port number, and the API key. You don't have to worry if you don't have the API key handy. You just would have noticed that as I click this, this option just arrived here. And when I click this right here, it takes me to my local host to the API key. Just copy this and paste this over here and click on login. So there we go. So basically what we saw in the presentation is what is happening here one by one. So simply click on record a new transaction and that's it. Now remember here you will have to enter the full base URL and that is the parent URL of your site. So all right, let me just use this one, that is manageengine.com, and I'm going to click on start recording. Now it has already opened the browser for me. It has opened the page for me. And what I want you to do is keep your eye on the bottom right side of the screen and you will see the status of the recorder. And we have already, by the way, started our transactions. This is most likely the first step. I'm going to click on IT operations management, browse to applications manager, and keep noticing the messages that are shown on the bottom right each time I make a click. So just notice it now when I click on this particular icon, the demo icon. It says recorded, click and wait. So we know that the transaction recorder is capturing the transactions correctly. So I click this and it again showed the same thing. So, all right. So I think we have done a few transactions. Now imagine now, just remember that all these transactions, what I performed were just random transactions. But of course, what we are doing now is mapping a journey or a website path flow that your end user is likely to take. Perhaps look at the feature page, perhaps look at the demo page, or perhaps be interested in pricing. So based on your understanding of a likely customer journey, now of course you can create multiple journeys and add them as monitors. So you definitely have the flexibility to do that. But all right, so I think we have done enough transactions. What I'm going to do now is click this recorder right here and you see that all of our transactions are captured here. So I'm going to click this, that is stop recording. And once I do that, let us just quickly see all the different transactions that we performed. Apparently 12 of them. Let me just play back and save. So when I do this, these are some configurations and I leave these configurations to the operator of the applications manager console because these can vary across organizations and basically these are self-explanatory, these parameters. So you know what the page load timeout does. It's basically the time taken to load all the HTML components within the web page. So that was 30 seconds. And basically you can customize these. And this again is based on your convenience, whichever you want. By default, this is Firefox. Select the agent. And of course, I told you I have an agent installed in my machine. And when you have one installed, it will show you the same thing. But of course, if you have multiple agents, it will show which agent to choose. For example, this agent is here. So I can monitor the end user experience from my location, that is this part. And if you have any other agent which is located in some other part of the world, you can choose that and get data from that agent as well. So once this is done, click on next. Poll interval again, whichever is good enough for you. You want to poll these transactions every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, every 10 minutes, and the same set of transactions are executed and the data is collected from each of those individual touch points, individual web pages. So once we do that, we click on save monitor. It says monitor added successfully, which means we are done. So I'm going to close this and I'm going to go here. And right here, it shows our real browser monitor, the one which we just added. But of course, if we click this, we might not have enough data immediately because we only just added it. So what I'm going to do is move here to the demo and show you details from an existing RBM monitor. And so basically this will show you the same details that we saw a couple of minutes ago in the presentation. So the number of agents that we have will be listed here. In this case, again, it's just one agent, and it looks like there are 3 transactions that were performed as part of synthetic transaction monitoring here. So let's get some more details about these steps that were taken. So that the average page load time, the transaction time is here. This is the split up. In the presentation, we saw it was a more flat and a more uniform graph. Here it's a more realistic representation of data. Right here we see that the page load time of the initial URL was significantly high, and this definitely doesn't look like an optimal uh, load time. So basically, that is something that site reliability engineers or web application engineers or people like that will be keen on monitoring. And if you notice right here, we have the screenshots as we spoke about, and looks like most of it is simply HTML file. And let me just take a look at the other one. And okay, so here we have some variation. Here we see that a lot of it is CSS, a few HTML with a 50-50 split over here in terms of the resource count percentage. And here is the waterfall graph. And if I simply keep my mouse cursor here, I can see the drill down of that entire 432 milliseconds of load time. So you see that out of the 432 milliseconds, most of which what was spent on network latency, that is 424 milliseconds. So let us take a quick drill down of maybe this text file, and it says the duration is 2178 millisecond, and it started at the following millisecond. So that gives us the kind of details that we would require to identify problems faster, especially when you're seeing multiple requests being processed on your website. So a simple simulation of your user website, I mean user journey along your website, can help you capture and monitor these same set of sequential transactions among your dynamic websites in real time. So let me go back to the presentation and take you to the next part, that is optimize the performance of your critical web pages with Web Page Analyzer. So a few slides first, and then we will go back to the product. So what can the Web Page Analyzer do for you? It will pinpoint, most importantly, bottlenecks related to the speed of your web page. And of course, we all know how important page speed is to end users. And apart from that, it will also help you with identifying unauthorized changes with your website in terms of, say, website content, that is HTML or the text or the image file. So basically, anybody trying to enter your website or gain access to it, make changes to it, all of these will be immediately notified. So just take a look at this screenshot basically. And this screenshot is perhaps a good example of what the web page analyzer can do in summation, in summary, that is. And what we see here is that the page score is 77, which is not exactly too bad, but nevertheless, we can do better. And when we look at why the speed is 7, it says it is particularly because of this defer passing of JavaScript. So this is something that we can probably do to improve the score here from 73 to somewhere upwards and move our grade from B to A. So, and here in blue are actually some real-time suggestions as to how you can do this. and the product basically tells you if you do this, maybe you will be able to save so and so percentage of the time taken to load, that is. So let me take you to the product before we look at the final part of today's session. So right here under the monitors tab, again, web server, web services, and I'm going to go all the way down, and here is the web page analyzer. And when I click on the web page analyzer, here is one that I have already added. Let's take a look at the details that we will be able to see when it comes to web page analyzer. So the overview tells us the summary of the web page, that is the web page URL, which is essentially the URL of the applications manager product that I've given here. This is the load time. The total number of requests sent were 72. Let's take a look at the response time summary, the summary of the different IP addresses that have pinged my web page. Let's take a look at the network log, where we can see the waterfall graph with the same kind of split up that we were talking about only minutes ago, about when we were talking about the synthetic transaction monitoring feature. And when I keep my mouse over it, it tells me that this particular image file, this particular XML file has taken a download time of 838 milliseconds. So basically a complete drill down and a screenshot wise drill down of my web page. So take a look at this interesting categorization of parameters, that is the different components that make up my web page, the different requests each of these components uh, re- uh, receive. And here is a screenshot with the split up of the resource count of these individual components that make up my web page. But then here is the main feature or the main insight that we were talking about, and that is the page speed insight. Now, when we look at the page speed score, this is 84. Again, this is quite a decent score, but let us see if we can take it above 90 and what we would need to do to take it above 90. So let's take a look. Let's begin by looking at the grades. So here's one that has a C grade, that is, it has a score of 58. So this is something that we need to improve, and everything else is looks like the lowest is 85 after this. So that's not that bad. It's still an A. So let's take a look at how we can increase this score here from 58. So right here, the product has its own suggestions. It says that if you compress the following resources, we will be able to see a 75% reduction. And it actually gives us, beyond this one line summary, it gives us which files to compress and how much can it save. So basically just doing this will allow us to have a better score here and thereby improve our page speed score. Of course, you will be better aware about which services or what to compress, what not to do, or if there is anything else, perhaps anything to improve here. Uh, for example, that you see this. So up to your own discretion what or which parameters you would want to do. But of course, the product acts as an enabler, enabling you with these parameters. And I showed you the details within the web page analyzer. Let me just quickly show you how you can add that. It's again very simple. Click on new monitor, click on add new monitor. Right here, browse to web servers, click on web page analyzer and enter a display name. I'm just going to enter I'm not going to add it. I'm just going to show how to do it. The URL, whichever is the URL that you are monitoring, and all the other details, basically they speak for themselves, and they should be pretty easy to fill up and add your monitor. But of course, there is one small thing that I would like to remind you here, that the web page analyzer, when you try to add this monitor, on your right is this help card with a download link. And what you need to do is click on this download link and install these web page analyzer add-ons. If you are using the Windows server, as is my case, you need to download this Windows Performance Analyzer web page analyzer add-on, and this is the link for your Linux. And once you download and install this add-on, all of these details that we were seeing will be collected and shown within your applications manager console. So that's about the web page analyzer. Let us quickly move to the presentation to look at the final part of this webinar, that is how can you prevent your website from being blacklisted, and how can you essentially use it to maintain the reputation of your brand. So what the brand reputation monitor is designed to do is it basically regularly checks your website against regularly updated standard web risk lists, and it notifies you if it finds any discrepancy there, saying you're missing this particular thing off your list, and perhaps you should take a look at it. It also detects links such as phishing links or malware links or any sort of unauthorized or insecure links that are probably trying to access your website in attempts to cause downtime or any other sort of damage. So that is what the brand reputation monitor is designed to do. And let me just quickly show you how the this particular monitor will look like within the product. So this is how it looks like within the product, and it would only be better if we see that within the product. So monitors again, web servers, right here under web servers, the fourth option is the brand reputation monitor. I'm going to click this one here and show you the details collected for the brand reputation monitor. So you see these are the web page URLs, and it says there are no phishing, there are no malware links or no unwanted software. So everything looks good so far, and that means that we have nothing to worry. And if we did have something to worry, these icons would change, and we will probably have an alert on whatever alerting action that we have configured within the product, that is an SMS or a help desk ticket creation or an email or any of the actions that you have configured with your alerting module. So, and just to show you how to add this, again, this would be a very simple and straightforward process. Adding the brand reputation monitor, enter your display name, enter the URL, and that is it. And when you click on discover web pages, this will basically give you a list of all the web pages within this parent URL, and then again you can choose which ones to add and which ones not to add. So that is as simple as it gets with respect to brand reputation monitor. Going back to the presentation, we are at the end of this session. I will take a few minutes to quickly walk through the things that we saw, and the first of which was URL monitor. That is how you could optimize your URLs, individual URLs, to monitor them for their health and their availability, and some parameters to understand the response time of the URL. Second, and the most important part, was synthetic transaction monitoring or real browser monitoring or digital experience monitoring, whichever way you call it. And that basically involved using an agent and a recorder to simulate user transactions, record them, and play them back. Basically, every poll is a playback of these sequential transactions, and the collected parameters are then real-time parameters every time those transactions are played back. And basically how it helps you to monitor user experience from different parts of your different parts of the globe. The third point was detecting unauthorized changes via web page analyzer, and of course we saw the insights under the page speed tab, and how the product not only identifies the low performing services, but also gives us real time suggestions as to what we can do to improve our page speed. Along with that, it also showed us a lot of other information about our web page performance. That is a waterfall graph and a basic resource split graph of a web page. So anything that any kind of performance insight that you could possibly need from your website is collected and presented with the web page analyzer. And finally, the website reputation, that is the brand reputation monitor. We saw how it helps us identify unauthorized links and insecure links, or malware or phishing attacks that might happen. So basically, what we saw today was how these features bundled together can basically uh, help in monitoring the website end to end from every aspect, and make sure that every problem is identified and resolved in real time before your end users even get affected by it. I'm signing off now. Have a good day, everybody.